The Empire had conquered 17 star systems. They had crushed species far older than themselves. Their fleets darkened the skies of 100 worlds. When their sensors first detected the small blue planet called Earth, they laughed. The readings showed primitive technology, chemical rockets, nuclear fission, radio waves still bouncing through space like the cries of infants. The High Council spent less than one rotation cycle deciding the fate of humanity. They would conquer. They would enslave. They would add another trophy to their collection of broken civilizations. Supreme Commander stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion. His silver scales caught the light of distant stars as he watched the blue marble grow larger on his. Behind him, 3,000 warships followed in perfect formation. Each vessel carried enough firepower to glass a continent. This would not be war. This would be extermination. The humans had no ships capable of reaching their own moon regularly. They had no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no faster-than-light travel. They were insects waiting to be crushed beneath the boot of a superior species. The first strike came without warning. 12 major cities vanished in pillars of fire. New York, London, Beijing, Tokyo, Moscow, they broadcast their demands across every human frequency. Surrender immediately, kneel before your new masters. Resistance meant complete annihilation. They expected crying, they expected begging. They expected the quick collapse they had seen from every other primitive species. Instead, they received silence. For 3 full days, no human response came. Deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, General Sarah stood in the newly activated human command bunker. Around her, the minds humanity had ever produced worked at their stations. They had known this day might come. For 50 years since the first alien signals were detected, Earth's governments had prepared in secret. Project Prometheus. Project Final Stand. The public knew nothing. The aliens knew nothing. And that was exactly how humanity wanted it. When the human response finally came, it was a single transmission sent on every frequency. A calm female voice spoke words that would echo through galactic history. To the invaders of Earth, you have made a mistake. You studied our radio waves, you watched our wars, you saw us fighting each other with primitive weapons. You thought you knew what humans were capable of. You were wrong. We were not showing you our strength. We were showing you our restraint. War was your mistake. Now face the consequences. Supreme Commander laughed when he heard the message. His officers laughed with him. What could these primitives possibly do? Their largest weapons were nuclear devices barely capable of destroying single cities. The shields could absorb 1,000 such impacts without failing. He ordered the second wave of bombardment to begin. The order would never be completed. The first ship exploded without warning. Then the second. Then 10 more. Watched in frozen horror as vessels that had conquered empires burst apart like fruit struck by invisible hammers. His sensors screamed with data he could not understand. The attacks were coming from everywhere and nowhere. From asteroids that had been dormant for decades. From satellites that had appeared to be primitive communication devices. From the dark side of Earth's moon, where something massive had been hidden for 30 years. Project Prometheus was humanity's first secret. Directed energy weapons hidden in plain sight across the solar system, disguised as space debris, masked as defunct satellites, built in secret factories on Mars and the asteroid belt. They had scanned for military installations. They had searched for obvious threats. They never thought to look at the garbage floating through space. Every piece of that garbage was now a weapon pointed at their fleet. Ordered his remaining ships to attack the hidden weapons. His targeting computers identified 200 sources of fire. His missiles launched by the thousands. Most were destroyed before they traveled half the distance to their targets. The few that reached their destinations found nothing but empty decoys. The real weapons had already moved. They were on rotating platforms, on mobile drones, on automated vessels that could relocate within minutes. The humans had been preparing for this fight longer than they had been watching them. The second shock came from Earth itself. The humans were supposed to be defenseless on their surface. Their cities were supposed to be burning. Their population was supposed to be in chaos. Instead, The ground forces met resistance unlike anything in the historical records of 100 conquered worlds. Human soldiers fought with weapons that should not exist, powered armor that enhanced their already frightening physical capabilities. Directed plasma rifles reverse-engineered from crashed scouts decades ago. Battlefield tactics that seemed to anticipate every move the invaders made. General watched the battle data flow across her screens. Every human soldier was linked to the network. Every weapon was coordinated by artificial intelligence. Every strategy had been practiced in secret simulations for 20 years. The thought they were facing primitives with gunpowder weapons. They were facing the most organized military response in human history, and they were facing something else. Something that terrified the command when they finally understood it. Humans did not surrender. Humans did not break. When one soldier fell, two more took their place. When a city was destroyed, its survivors picked up weapons and joined the fight. When families were killed, the remaining members did not collapse in grief. They became hunters. They became ghosts in the night that slit throats. They became suicide bombers who smiled as they detonated themselves among enemy commanders, that had conquered species that valued survival above all else. Humans valued something different. They valued revenge. Supreme Commander watched his invasion force crumble over the following weeks. 3,000 ships became 2,000, then 1,000, then 500. His ground troops were being slaughtered at ratios that all military logic. For every human killed, 20 fell. The primitives used their own planet against the invaders. They collapsed tunnels on armor columns. They poisoned water supplies. They released biological agents tailored to physiology. Someone had studied his species very carefully. Someone had been preparing these weapons for a very long time. The breaking point came when the humans revealed Project had believed the initial strikes had killed 2 billion humans. The population centers were gone. The leadership should have been eliminated. He was wrong. Underground cities had been constructed over decades. Entire populations had been evacuated hours before the strikes using tunnels that stretched for thousands of kilometers. The humans he had been fighting were not the remnants of a shattered civilization. They were the organized military of a species that had hidden its true numbers. When the fleet finally retreated, only 93 ships remained of the original 3,000. Supreme Commander was not among the survivors. His flagship had been boarded by human special forces in the final hours of the battle. They had fought through his guards with terrifying efficiency. They had captured him alive. They had made him watch as they transmitted a message to the general appeared on screens across the Empire. Behind her stood the captured Supreme Commander, bound and bleeding. Her voice was calm. Her eyes were cold. She spoke slowly so that every word would be perfectly translated. We received your demands for surrender. We have considered them carefully. Our response is this. You came to our world expecting easy prey. You found something else. You found a species that spent its entire history fighting itself. You found a species that has perfected the art of war across 10,000 years of constant conflict. You found a species that does not know how to quit. She paused. The silence stretched across light years. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of a promise. We have studied your empire, we know your worlds, we know your weaknesses. We have built ships capable of reaching we have constructed weapons your science cannot comprehend. You thought you were the hunters. You were wrong. The hunt now moves in the opposite direction. This is the last message from human command. Run, hide, pray to whatever gods your species believes in. It will not save you, but it might give you comfort in your final moments. The transmission ended. The Empire spent the following months fortifying their systems. They built new fleets. They prepared new weapons. They believed they still had time to prepare for the human counterattack. They were wrong about the timing. The first human vessels appeared in space 3 weeks later. They were faster than anything the Empire had ever encountered. They were armed with weapons that bypassed shields entirely. They struck without warning and vanished before any response could be organized. The war lasted 4 years. The conquest of the took only 6 hours. When it was over, the empire that had terrorized 17 star systems ceased to exist. Their worlds were not destroyed. Their people were not enslaved. That would have been the way. Humanity had different plans. The conquered species were offered a choice. Join the new human alliance or remain neutral and be left in peace. Most chose to join. They had seen what humanity could do to its enemies. They wanted to be friends. General stood on the balcony of the former Capitol building. Below her, representatives from a dozen species gathered for the signing of the new Alliance Charter. Behind her, a statue was being erected. It showed a human soldier standing over a fallen warrior. The inscription at its base read simply, "War was your mistake." She thought about the message she had recorded years ago. She thought about the fear in his eyes when he finally understood what humanity truly was. The galaxy had believed humans were primitives. They had believed the constant warfare on Earth was a sign of weakness. They had never considered another possibility. The wars of Earth were practice. The conflicts were training. Every generation of humans had been preparing for a fight they knew would eventually come. The stars now belonged to humanity, not through cruelty, not through domination, through simple truth. Any species foolish enough to threaten Earth would face consequences beyond their imagination. Any species wise enough to offer friendship would find humanity to be the most loyal allies in the galaxy. The choice was simple. The message was clear. And across the cosmos, every watching civilization understood that some prey should never be hunted. The last message from human command was not a threat. It was a fact. War was your mistake. And humanity never let its enemies make the same mistake twice.